The year is 1763. American colonists had just finished fighting the French and Indian War on behalf of their British overlords. In return, the British gave Americans parcels of land west of the Appalachian Mountains. At first, the Americans were happy, but that would soon change. Here are 5 things that you need to know about the Proclamation of 1763. In the wake of the French and Indian War, a Native American tribal leader named Pontiac was fed up with the British military presence on his land. He and other tribes launched an attack on the British, and fighting continued for the next 3 years. While the British government was already in the process of drafting the Proclamation of 1763, Pontiac's rebellion sped up its enactment. The British needed to find a way to keep Native American tribes happy, so they drew a line that effectively cut off any westward expansion by their colonies. Native Americans would be allowed to keep the area west of the Appalachians, while American colonists had to contain their settlements to the east, rendering their land grants absolutely worthless. Adding insult to injury, any colonists already settled out west were ordered to move. You see the problem? The Americans felt the proclamation was unfair, so in many cases, they just ignored it. In a few instances, British soldiers forced American frontiersmen back across the border, sometimes burning their settlements. But for the most part, enforcement was pretty weak, and colonists still sought land across the border, even if that meant breaking the law. French and Indian War hero George Washington was one of the many colonists who flouted the law and sought to purchase as much forbidden territory as possible. In a letter to his real estate agent, he dismissed the Proclamation of 1763 as a temporary expedient to quiet the minds of the Indians. In other words, Washington believed the proclamation would be repealed someday, and when it was, he wanted to already have a claim to this land. One of the unintended but most significant effects of the proclamation was the universal hatred for the British it created throughout colonial America. This is one of the earliest circumstances that created an American identity, because for the first time, the 13 colonies had something in common. The British promised them land, and they didn't get it. If you're looking to find causes for the American Revolution, one of the earliest and least obvious is the Proclamation of 1763. King George thought he could contain the colonist settlements, but what he could not contain was their freedom.